From Boston College.
Thank you, Jeffrey. It's good to be back. I was mentioning to Steve off the air, I love these trips. I literally mark my calendar, buy them a few times per year. I just love coming home, though. I missed my wife. I missed our kids. It's just good to be home.
Well, and
it's good to see you guys in the flesh, too.
I think traveling for business, if you have a nice home, gets harder the older you get.
Oh, I'd agree with that. I would agree with that.
It gets harder.
I think my feeling is, though, that when you have good relationships, and I would throw you guys into the mix, too, it's just good to see everybody face to face.
You miss sleeping with me too?
FCC, here we come.
Well, Greg, tell us what's going on in China, not what CNN tells us.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was reading the news the other day, and they mentioned that the two Koreas are about to sit down, and they're talking about reopening the Kaesong Industrial Complex.
Right.
And they mentioned that they were in the negotiations room for several hours.
And they never mentioned.
Well, no, and I had to chuckle that we were literally in that same negotiations room, a few days earlier. And when they mentioned the Kaesong Industrial Complex, I saw the Kaesong Industrial Complex from afar. So, and to your point, though, and the question is. The intent of the question is accurate. Nothing was mentioned about bombs. Nothing was mentioned about politics.
It was all out of respect.
It's all out of the way the business is actually done, as opposed to how it gets reported in mainstream media.
It's hard for me. I guess I could not be a Korean negotiator. You know what I'm like, because when I think it, I ask the question very directly. You know what I'm like.
Well, I thought you were going to say you couldn't be a mainstream reporter for CNN because it's a way of reporting the news, and I
just don't know how those guys can get in the room and not talk about the 12,000-ton gorilla.
I just think it's all about diplomacy. I was very impressed with the way that President Obama and President Xi dealt with their summit over the past few days in California.
Right.
Like you, I know how to run a business. I know how to add value to businesses. I could never be a diplomat. I could never be a mainstream television or newspaper reporter. It's just a different skill set that you either have it or you don't.
Right. So, was that your first trip to Korea?
Oh, no. We've been to Korea several times. We fortunately have been to the DMZ several times. I think what is particularly ironic to me is that every single year, and I wish I could say that I planned this and this was my brilliance, it's neither of the two. Every single year, amongst the 4 geographies that I choose to visit, something is always happening in the news. And it just happened to be this year that the Koreas had a heightened tension on the peninsula in terms of next steps.
But you were in South Korea, and South Korea is still a emerging economic force. Their cars are increasing in quality, valuations every year. Their TVs now rank above the Japanese, some of their TVs, in terms of quality, which was not even heard of even 5 years ago. So have you noticed a difference?
Oh, I definitely have noticed a difference. And that's part of, I was talking with Steve off air, as I mentioned before. I love doing these trips because I just love to teach. I love the honor of being able to represent the school. But taking all of that off the table, I learned a ton from these experiences. I mean, we visited 20 companies, and we received a 1 hour or 90-minute overview of their strategy, plus all of the preparatory work that goes into it. I learned an absolute ton. And the other sort of benefit you have of doing so many cities in a short period of time is you have the ability to compare and contrast one to the other. So to your point, the South Koreans are really, really hungry right now, and they